If you're like me, you probably have a lot of Sonic figures, specifically from JAKKS Pacific. Now I've been collecting for just over a year, and I've amassed a lot of 4-inch figures as that's the most diverse line of figures. But there is a massive issue that I and many people have with these figures is that they're not very posable. These figures also lack a lot of accessories and lack a lot of expression due to the fact that they only have one face. Now JAKKS have made expensive collector's figures that are around 6 inches tall, which is way bigger than the normal 4-inch figures. However, they do lack a lot of articulation even though they have more accessories. Surprisingly, the movie figures have more articulation than any other figure made by JAKKS. Now I have made something similar before in terms of the interchangeable mouth of my Shadow 05 figure, and I've also tried to do a lot of accessories and elbow joints with my Super Sonic from Sonic Adventure 1. However, these custom figures have never gotten to the quality of an imported action figure from a high quality company. So I decided to give the ultimate Sonic figure a go. So to start off, I designed this in Blender. It's a head that has a detachable mouth and eyes. Now it didn't work perfectly, so I came up with a second iteration that worked a lot better. As you can see here, I actually got the figure properly printed and the actual eye divots are a lot more deeper as to not interfere with the eyes. So I was on the right track. However, when I put the figure together, I noticed that the head was way too big, so I had to rescale it down to this size. And at this scale, everything fits in perfectly, and I printed out all these different faces that I designed, and I left the eyes intentionally blank so I could paint the eyes wherever I wanted to. The reason why I'm not showing the Blender footage is because when I was designing the 3D model, it took a lot of trial and error to get the correct design that you see here. So basically the video is pretty much outdated because the designs that I did in that don't work, and I had to redesign it in my own time. But moving on, I decided to add some toe articulation to Sonic's shoes because I personally found that they were quite limiting when I was trying to pose this figure for my other customs. So I designed this here where you have a pin that you put into the foot and it acts as an axle for the rotation of the shoe. This is really nice and it adds a lot more articulation to the figure. So if you couldn't tell by the quill shape of the figure, I'm basing this off of Sonic Frontiers. I created this base to look like one of the islands from Sonic Frontiers, but I didn't go for any specific one. So to start off, I painted the base coat of blue onto Sonic's head. I intentionally left some brush strokes to give the quill texture that Sonic has in Frontiers and Shadow Generations. I quickly moved on to trying to get the skin color just right for Sonic. I started off with this really yellowish color, and then I started to mix in some peach color into it, just to get the right shade of skin. When painting this figure, I really wanted to make sure that this paint texture was correct, and that anything that was smooth was supposed to be smooth, and anything that was supposed to be rough was rough. So you can see with the shoe, I really went with thin layers of paint in order to get the smooth texture that Sonic shoes for some reason have. I really don't like painting gold because it gets everywhere, and any smudge of golden paint that gets onto anything takes forever to paint over, especially white paint. So I had to be quite careful, and same goes for the gray, because if I overspilled the gray, I'd have to paint over the white, and that would take a couple of layers. Also, if you're wondering why I have this strange music choice of Sonic songs that don't really match up, it's because these are the songs I use in my original Super Sonic figure from Sonic Adventure 2. I made this 1 year before posting this video, and it was my first ever Sonic custom. To take a break from the figure, I moved on to the base. I started off by painting all the muddy texture underneath the grass, and then I moved on to the actual grass itself. You'll notice here that I left the texture quite strange, and I only did a thin layer of green, and you'll see why in a second. But first I had to cover up all the green paint that spilled over onto the rocks. I decided to add some fake grass to the base by adding some glue and then putting some fake grass on top of it. I also painted the edges of the base black. However, I did go back on this later and painted it a brown. Moving on to the more difficult parts, I had to paint these eyes, which thankfully I drew over first to get the right shape, and then I painted the green and then black. Now this is quite nerve-wracking because if I mess this up, I'd have to paint over a bunch of white paint just to get it back to a pure white, so then I can repaint it and hope that I don't get it wrong the second time. I was starting to think at this point in the custom that the figure wouldn't turn out too well. I normally think about this for most of my customs, however, for this custom I really did feel like it wasn't turning out as I wanted to. But I went through with it because I actually hadn't seen what it looked like altogether. I was adding the final details and just hoping that it would all come together perfectly. So here he is, my attempt at an ultimate Sonic figure. As you can see here, I added the toe articulation and it goes pretty far, although you only really need it to go about this far, but it can go the full way if you want. Also, he has elbow articulation, and I just really like the glossiness of the eyes. It really makes it look premium. I was really worried about this figure, because if one part was slightly off, the whole figure wouldn't work. However, I do think I saved this figure with the articulation, the paint job, and the overall sculpt. So as you can see here, the mouth comes off pretty easily and the eyes do as well. I'll show you a few of the mouths on the standard eyes, just to show you how all these look. Here you have the tooth smile, which those actually look a lot like the Sonic Heroes face. I didn't intend for that, but I like it. This is the shocked expression, which I thought was going to be the worst one, but honestly, it's probably my favorite. Originally the whole mouth was black, but I added the tongue and it looks a lot better now. Then you can see here I also mirrored the face so we can go onto the other side, so that's a little smirk. And you also got the angry face, which looks a lot similar to the Supersonic figure I made not too long ago, so I'm kind of happy that I have that kind of art style going on. And then here's the neutral face on the left side of his mouth. This is honestly one of my favorites as well. I just like the way I painted the face. And you can see the eyes pop out. Now maybe on the first 1 or 2 times you're taking these out, they may not go very smoothly, but after a while they kind of loosen up. I might fix that before I release these, but you can see here this is the looking to the right eyes. And here's a few faces with them. I really do like this mouth as well, especially with these eyes. It looks pretty nice. And then here's a looking off to the left eyes. and the forward-facing ones as you've seen before. And this is a winking face. So this is based off of the Lego Sonic eyes and also the actual collector Sonic eyes. And then here's a closed eyes eyepiece just if you want it. Here's a quick look at the elbow articulation. I showed these on my Shadow 6 and Supersonic SA1 figures, but here's just another showcase in case you haven't watched those. I do recommend you watch these. There's also another surprise. I made the soap shoes from Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Frontiers with toe articulation, so that's a quick look at that. And I also made a ring. Now, it's not the best accessory, but I quite like it. I didn't want to go too far with the accessories because I focused mainly on the mouths and eyes and the hands. So you can see here the different hands. You got the Sonic Adventure 1 hands and a few others. You got the soap shoes, the main figure, the base, and the bunch of expressions. I'm really happy with this because it really feels like a premium figure. So with that being said, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and let me know what other Ultimate Sonic figures you want me to make. Do you want me to make Shadow, Knuckles, Tails, Amy, Eggman, maybe? Just let me know, and I'm so happy to be doing this for 1 year now. Never expected to get 4,000 subscribers in that period of time, so thank you to everyone for that. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.